Hello everyone and welcome to the Maximum Guitar YouTube channel. Today we return to Ace Waters Studios with the actual Ace Waters this time.
Hey.
He is a legendary synth musician who's been making video game YouTube covers for quite a while now. I believe he has an EP out that was released a while ago that you can check out on his Bandcamp. Am I correct in saying that? That was your latest release?
Yeah, I think my latest, it's an original EP of music I did for a film.
All right, so go check that out. How are you doing today, Ace?
I'm doing good. Feels good
Cool.
to be the one doing the interview when the interview's in my studio.
Yeah. I had Josiah on a while ago, who was over at your place working on his album.
Yep.
Which is still not done yet, but I'm patiently waiting for that to come out.
We're working on it. We got to wait for a couple more parts from people, but it's close. I promise it's close. The final track listing has been the final track listing now for a couple months, and we just got to tidy up some things and get it all mastered and ready. So we're close, though.
Very cool to hear. So why don't you go ahead and let people know who are watching, who may not know who you are, what it is that you do on YouTube.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Ace. I don't know if I'd use the word synth legend, but I am a musician who uses a lot of synthesizers. And I do VGM covers. I also do like movies, other geek culture, and I also do original music. I do all sorts of stuff. You probably know me if maybe you don't recognize my face or my name. I'm the side of determination maybe you don't listen to as much of. It's my own little self-depreciating joke, but no. Yeah, I made determination with Rich. I'm the synthy atmospheric side, and other than that, yeah, I've been doing YouTube now this is like year 6, so I have been doing this for quite a while, and I just like making music, and that was a way that I figured out that I could keep doing it and have it be my job, so.
That's super duper cool. I know most of these things that you've said, but for those watching who didn't know, go check him out. His stuff is phenomenal, quite relaxing a lot of the time, and he's got a couple bops in there in his discography lineup of covers. So there's a bunch of different things that we do here on this show, and normally we start out the interview before we get into the meat of the questions with 2 things. The first thing is that whoever the guest is gets to select what the screensaver in the background will be. You can have absolutely anything you want. I've had a lot of very interesting requests. So it's like a quad split screen kind of thing going on. So one of the split screens will have whatever you want in it, taking up a quarter of the screen. What would you like that to be?
Awesome. I actually have a folder of some pictures. They're all different memes that I made out of a picture of Rich originally holding... I believe he's originally holding Jules' album in his hands, and he's not wearing a shirt. And I did some stuff with that picture, so I'll send those your way. And I think those would be a really great
Right.
4th quadrant. Is just some great pictures of Rich.
Well, you'll be seeing those Rich pictures. I still haven't been able to get a hold of Rich to get him on the show, but I'm very interested in doing that at some point. He's a busy man.
I mean, he sucks too. That's
yeah. I mean,
that's kind of that was going to be the thing, because I remember you did that with Josiah, and originally I just wanted you to write like. I mean, you could also do this. You could also just put in Pink Comic Sans "Rich sucks" over there. That also works. That's kind of a catchphrase of my channel, but I think the pictures will do better.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
He's a good boy.
He is a good boy. I mean, he sucks, but he is a good boy. Like,
exactly.
We can all agree on this.
Definitely.
So the person I last had on the show, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He is a smaller prog metal guitarist here on YouTube. His name is Richardson. Are you familiar with his work?
Oh yeah, I've heard his name and I've seen some of his stuff.
Yeah. So what we do is we will have the previous interviewee ask a single question to whoever is going to be on the show next. So we were talking about this, and I'm not entirely sure. I know you have at least one child, but do you have more than one, or is it just
one?
One kid.
Yep.
Okay,
5
so yeah.
And 4 dogs as well. 1 kid, 4 dogs.
Nice. That's a nice family you got going on. But his question to you was, what is your child's favorite meal?
Probably either sushi or pad thai. Those are like, if I ever throw out like, what do you want to do for dinner, and we can do anything, those are probably we're either going to do Thai food and get pad Thai or sushi. So big
Mm.
fan of those.
All right, well, there you have it. So we're going to go ahead and get into the meat of the questions here. I've prepared a whole bunch of sort of general questions about the things we do on YouTube, and I'll go ahead and lay them on you. So the first question I have, starting out with the big guns. So you have a really, really unique lineup of video game covers. You do stuff on YouTube that really nobody else does. You have that ambient synth niche. So why do you think that that isn't hugely popular? Because it seems like a lot of YouTube music is dominated by progressive metal or jazz and acoustic stuff. And not a lot of people are doing synth, but you would expect because you are the only one to be doing synth that it should be blowing up. At least I think it should be blowing up because it's so unique, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not like 100%. I try really hard not to like get too deep into like theory crafting over that just because it tends to get really like the darker side of like my mental health. Like the real reason is just because you're not very good. But and that's not. I don't actually believe that. But it's I don't know. I think it's a lot of things. I think my music tends to be like the real payoff in a lot of my like, especially my favorite arrangements, comes much later on. Like you have to really like a lot of my tracks are between 5, 7, 8 minutes long, and there's like a slow build that leads up to something, and you really have to invest time in it. And I don't know, YouTube isn't always the most into like long-term investments in music. I think it's also less like instantly flashy. Like prog metal will like punch you in the face with like, oh, there's the cool, there's the and I think the I don't know. I feel like a lot of times my music tends to be the like music for musicians, like because the stuff that I like work really hard on and the stuff that I take a lot of time, and I feel like where my true like talents shine are in subtler places. It's stuff that maybe the average non-music player might not notice, like my choice of like chord arrangements or like the patch building I do and stuff that just doesn't quite. It's not quite as widely accessible. Um, but honestly, I don't really know. Like I just kind of keep doing it. I'm hoping one of these days, all the people who are like, "Oh, this is grossly underrated," that'll all come to pass and something will blow up, and my like 300 plus videos will be available for all to check out. But
That's definitely the dream for all.
yeah, and I also think I think another part of it's just that like I'm really eclectic. Like when you come to my channel, you never are 100% sure what you're going to get. Sometimes it's going to be a like quiet ambient cover of a song that's normally fast. Sometimes it's going to be like a weird like like my last cover was of a Trombone Disaster from Urban Yeti,
Yeah.
and that's like noise punk. Like so, I feel
Sure.
like I'm a very eclectic styles of sound, so everything's always going to be different, and maybe that makes it less friendly to the algorithm. I don't know. I don't play the algorithm at all either, so that's probably a part of it. Is I don't do that. I go with what moves me, and I guess that doesn't always work out as well. Hold
Yeah,
on.
I feel like it's definitely a lot healthier to not try and play the algorithm and kind of just hope for the best. I mean, I understand that there are people who are really like banking hard on playing the algorithm and making sure they get views because if they don't, they're not going to be able to pay the bills. But there's something so kind of creatively destructive about that. It doesn't really allow you to do your thing. It makes your art become work, and that is almost never a good thing in my experience.
Yeah, I like. So for me, it's all about respecting my relationship with music, and if I make a song and I'm proud of it and it doesn't get a ton of views, I'm still proud of the work I made. But if I start thinking about I'm going to do this because it's a tentpole for this release and this will hopefully generate a lot of views, and I'm not really excited about the source material or excited about my cover, and it doesn't perform in those ways, or YouTube's algorithm changes, like that's going to devastate me, and it's going to, in my mind at least, and I don't want this to be prescriptive at all. Every person approaches music differently, but I know for me, like staying true to like pursuing the music that I'm passionate about is what keeps me going. It's why I'm still doing this. Otherwise, I think I would have crashed and burned long ago. So, that's always my advice is to, well, I guess it's not really advice. That's just why I do it, is because you should do whatever you're comfortable with doing with music, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about these awesome synth covers that you make. So can you tell me a little bit about how you have sort of procured your kind of vast understanding of synth music and how you've sort of honed your craft over the years?
Yeah, so when I started my YouTube channel, that was actually right around the time I got into synthesizers. Before that, I actually didn't. I knew almost nothing about synths, and I had this desire, like this idea, to kind of pursue making what I was calling at the time synth folk music, and I wanted to try and make it as a full time musician. And so what I did was I worked on an original album that was called Through a Drop Refracted, and I was going to gig that album in Portland and hopefully start touring. I was going to do like ambient music on the side of the road busking, and I was going to do YouTube, and the YouTube was going to be like one of the three things I did, and my hope was that like if all three of them go moderately okay, maybe I can make a career out of it. Like making a career in music, typically you need to diversify as much as possible because one source of income is probably not going to cut it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do three different things. And then two of those things were utter failures, and YouTube kind of stuck with me. But all that to say, synths kind of came around at that point. Before then, I was doing a lot of like kind of folk punk, very organic instruments. I was a piano player originally as a kid, and then I did saxophone, bassoon, and bass guitar in high school, and also picked up guitar in high school. And so, like, going into that time period of my life, I didn't really have very much knowledge of synths, and I wanted to. I was like, okay, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to, like, figure out how these synths work. And I bought a Moog Minotaur, which is my, like, first real analog synth. And I bought it being, like, with the intention of, I'm going to learn what all these letters mean, VCA versus LFO versus envelope. I didn't know what any of those terms meant at the time, and I was like, okay, this is going to be what teaches me. And I just kind of, that was the hook, right? It started with two synths, and then, okay, now that I've learned what this one can do, I know its limitations, so now I need a polysynth. Okay, and now that I want to be able to I want to route this envelope into this thing, and this synth can't do it. Okay, I'm going to need this one. Now I'm going to get into modular, where I can literally route anything. And basically the more I played with the synths I had, the more I realized what other synths could do, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But it was all self-taught, like my entire dive into the synth world. And it was super supplemented by my local synth shop that's called Control Voltage in Portland. Anytime I didn't understand something or wanted to understand something better, I'd go in there, and they have a really awesome small show floor just full of synths that you can just go and play. And the people who work there are like super supportive of people. And like when you walk in, I was really nervous because like synth culture online can be very exclusionary and very like elitist. So I was like really nervous, and the owner was like super friendly, and he's like, hey, yeah. I was like, I don't understand how modular works. Can you teach me? And he's like, yeah, and he takes me over to the modular wall and starts plugging in cables and explaining things to me. And I was like, this is amazing. So that was a huge part of being able to learn what I'm doing.
That's really, really cool that you sort of had that journey for yourself.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of people who will learn sort of their musical craft and develop their skills through the education system, which sort of brings us into our next question. Because I remember, I'm pretty sure it was in your last Q&A, you mentioned that you went to college for a long time and you really didn't get a whole lot out of it. I'm currently in college right now. I'm almost a senior, and I've been studying theater and music in school. And I remember in a Q&A, I'm pretty sure it was your last Q&A, you were mentioning that you went to college and that didn't really do anything for you. So just as a college student right now, I sort of want to hear, like, what was your journey like? What happened in college? Why didn't you get things out of it that you wanted? What were you hoping to accomplish? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I got stuff out of college for sure. Like, I don't know if that was, maybe I just communicated it wrong. I am super grateful for all I learned in college. The thing is, I didn't get a degree out of college. I went to like 7 different colleges by the end of it all, and I probably, if you were to get all the credits from all the different colleges and put them all together, you could probably make some kind of really wacky degree out of it. But what happened was I was a music performance major, and then a music composition major, and then I was a philosophy major, and then I was a business major. And basically I decided after like 3 years at one school, or 2 years at one school, where I got enough credits to be like my 4th semester in school, I was already like on my way to being a senior because I did like overloads every single semester and pushed myself really hard. And then I really wanted to move home and marry my now wife. We were high school sweethearts, and then I went off to college, and I was like, all right, we're going to get married. And I was also kind of done with that school for a lot of reasons, more personal than anything. It was a private Christian school, and I had kind of moved on with my beliefs and wasn't really comfortable there anymore. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to try something else. And then I moved back to Illinois and went to Columbia Music School downtown Chicago for a semester. That was actually really hard for me because my theory that I had learned. Uh, the dumbest thing that was hard for me was that I learned fixed solfege in college.
Okay.
And because if there's one thing my tiny private school had was a really, really, really well trained and amazing theory teacher. Like our theory teacher was a Juilliard trained, like one of the best piano players in the world. Like he was incredible, and he pushed us hard in theory. And one of the things was when we did sight reading, we had to do fixed solfege. So I was like, okay, this is how it works. And then I went in and they started using movable do, and I was like, oh my god, I literally can't handle this because I learned the harder one, and now you're doing the easier one, and my brain can't handle it. Plus, the commute, because I lived like 2 hours out of the city, was just a lot. And then I really wanted to open a tea shop, which was like, I needed to find a small business degree, and I jumped around schools. So while I didn't get a degree, I got a ton of knowledge from school. And I don't know if I'd do it all again. There's a part of me that really wants to get a degree at some point, but I doubt it would be in music at this point in my life. I feel like, I don't know, again, it's really hard to give carte blanche advice or like prescriptive statements because every person learns differently. I feel like we do live in an era where you have unfettered access to the internet. Anything you want to learn how to do, you can learn how to do. And the most important skills, I believe, to what I'm doing right now, which are recording, mixing, engineering, and synths, all of those I learned on my own. Like just learning things, looking up things, and with recording, just doing it every week for 6 years, right? Like that's how I learned how to mix. I never like professionally learned how to mix. I also think that there are some shortfalls in school where like if you're always learning by the book without getting your, spending enough time with your own ears, learning what works for you, that can trip people up sometimes. But there's also a ton of good to learn by learning the like, especially on the theory end of things. And like, I think if you're going to learn anything, go learn. If you can do it, do it, but I think theory especially can be really, really beneficial because it's like learning the language and learning all the nuances of the language you're speaking. And then, then when you break those rules or you like purposely go against what like the theory says, you're doing it intentionally. And that makes it way more interesting in my mind. So, I don't know. I think there's lots of ways to learn. And I kind of feel like I'm the product of that because I have some school book learning. I have tons of lessons from like my childhood under my belt, and then I also have a ton of self-taught stuff.
That's really, really cool. Because I don't know, I've always sort of been one of the guys who's like, anarchy, the school system is broken, everything. Because I feel that it's disappointing that our society places so much value on getting a degree when it's very clear that there are people like you who learned a ton of stuff in college, but because you didn't learn enough of a particular thing, you're basically being punished for it, which is, I feel like today a degree is not worth as much as it used to be, and maybe I'm grossly wrong in that estimation, but that's what it seems like to me. So it's things are frustrating when it comes to education.
It definitely, and I think it's a really complex thing. Like that's why I don't think there are easy answers. I think that like I said, I did 7 years of learning, and while I value the learning I got, I never got a degree. I never got the piece of paper at the end of it. And I don't really care about that piece of paper. I cared about what I learned. My last, it was just a 2-year program. The last thing I was doing was a 2-year small business certificate. And I only needed one class to finally get the certificate. But it was like a class called entrepreneurship. And it was just going to cover all the things I learned in the other classes I took. And I was like, that's not worth my time. Like the piece of paper doesn't matter, because I'm just going to hear the same information recycled, so I'm just not going to do that. And so for me, like, there is definitely part of that. I definitely think that some cynicism towards the school system is justified. I just think, in my mind, I don't want to discourage anyone from learning. Like, that's my whole thing. It's like, and whatever works for you is what works for you. Like, if, watching YouTube tutorials and trying things. And, I don't think what worked for me, which was literally just doing it over and over and over again every single week, that's not going to work necessarily for everyone, because some people might not have, like, I had an absurd, insatiable drive to just keep doing this, and I don't know where that comes from, and I don't even know if that's healthy or good. It just is. It is who I am. And I was like, the big part of why I decided to pursue music as a job was because I just kept doing it. I had released like 5 albums up to that point that no one listened to. So, for me, just doing it over and over again made sense, but that might not work for other people, because their personality might not click with that kind of weird grind I found myself in for so many years. And so, whatever gets, helps you to make more music is what I support.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of that grind, I got to ask you, what do you think sort of the biggest struggles making and producing your kind of music, specifically your struggles that you have making your own music, have been?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I feel like
Big question.
It's a big question, and if you would have asked me that in like November, I would have had a hard time answering. But I spent the last 4 months really radically rethinking what my life should look like, and what my channel should look like, and what my workflow should be, because I kind of found myself in a really deep, like, mentally dark depression place. Like, my mental health got really bad after December and kind of crashed for a couple months. And one of the things I found, the hardest thing, was that I had, even though I was making music that I personally loved, and I was always like following that, like, do what moves you, and that was working, but I had kind of stumbled into this situation where the amount of content I was putting out was the value of my worth, because I was doing Patreon by video. And that meant that if I wanted to, at the point that I was at and the amount of money I was making on Patreon, if I wanted to pay all of my bills with my Patreon money, I had to be getting out 4 to 6 videos a month. That was a lot of videos.
Wow.
And
That's a lot of videos, yeah.
And I was doing like weekly covers, and then I was making music on live streams that I was then making into the monthly EPs and putting those out as videos. And I was doing that pretty solidly for like a few months. And I mean, I'd done monthly videos for years, but I realized that like it was like slowly eating away at like a lot of the like work that I was doing in therapy and like with my own mental health to like have a positive self-image. And that whole system was just eating away at it, because somewhere in my brain, like, the amount of money I could bring in is the amount of stability I can have for my family. The amount of worth I have, unfortunately, in the world we live in, was really tied to that number. And that number was tied to how much, hashtag content I could get out. And so
Hashtag content.
It was super destructive. Like, because every week I was like, if I didn't get, if I had only gotten out 4 videos, I was like hating myself. And I was like, 4 videos, that's absurd. Like, most artists make an album of 12 songs every 2 years. Like, and I'm getting out like, 4 to 5 videos a month. And that's a couple albums worth of material every year.
Absolutely.
And I realized that, like, even if I'm only doing 2 or 3 videos a month, I'm really proud of those videos. I shouldn't feel like mad at myself. And so that was definitely the hardest hurdle to like kind of process and internalize and understand, because I reached a point where normally I'd sit down and be like, okay, I know what I want to cover. And then I'd have this like hurdle of actually getting started on whatever I wanted to cover. And once I got started, I was good, right? Like once I tracked that first part, or, really pressed record and actually got going, I would just work. And I would work, for 2 straight days, get a video together, it's done, I'm happy. But it was that like I'd have this anxiety about that first getting started. And that time period got longer and longer. So originally it would be like a couple hours of like sitting in front of my computer, like working over, and it's really hard to describe to people who don't have anxiety, like this feeling of like want to do something but not being able to just push through it. And so it would get really bad, and what ended up happening was that time period went from like a couple hours to like weeks. Like, it would be weeks before I could have the like heart to make something again. And so that was like totally not good. And I realized that it was like, again, the way I word it is my relationship with music. Like, I have to take care of that, because music's super important to me. And if I break that relationship between me and music, it's just my life's gonna fall apart. So
Yep.
that was definitely something that was really hard. And now that I'm getting back into it, my Patreon is no longer based on per video; it's per month, and that's been a huge weight. Also, my wife opened a skate park, and now I
Yeah.
went from having like 6 days of the week all day to work, and like in November, October, I was working that time, and I was putting out 4 to 6 videos a month. And then I went through a period of time where of those 80 to 100 hours that I was working, I was probably spending 70 of it just trying to get over my own junk. But now I only have like 20 or 30 hours a week because I'm helping my wife at her skate park, and I'm taking care of our kid, and I'm doing I'm grocery shopping and doing laundry and all this stuff. And so my life is way busier, but I'm doing the same amount of work I was doing just without all the nonsense spending hours in my office hating myself. So it's a really positive thing. And like today,
that's so awesome.
And so today today is the first day I've recorded a video since my April Fool's video came out. Like I haven't made any music since then because I've just been so busy. But I came upstairs, I sat down, and I just got into it. I was like, oh my God, it was like the break I needed, and now I'm back into it. So yeah, I think the hardest, I don't know if that sufficiently answers the question, but
no, it absolutely does.
Cool.
I don't know. It's really, really nice to hear that, because I mean, as much as music is a creative outlet and it's supposed to be super duper fun, it can really get to you sometimes, especially when you have all of these various monetary goals that you feel like you have to reach. It's important to get yourself in a mindset and approach that in an interesting way, because when you're talking about that, it reminds me of a lot of my friends who have gone through similar things, and it reminds me sort of myself in a way, because I was a music major 2 quarters ago, and with my school's system and the way it was conflicting with sort of my life and the way that I saw music, it made me not want to make music anymore. And then I switched majors, and I'm back to loving music again.
There you go.
So, sometimes it takes some jarring life choices, but it's like, maybe you know what I'm talking about when I say you make a really big, huge life choice, a life decision, you change something, and then you instantly know this was the right choice. I did the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Oh yeah, and I've felt that a lot. Like I feel like right now my life is in a really interesting place where it's like I'm super in transition now, right? Like I don't know where I'm going to land on the other side of this, because our life is just totally up in the air, because opening a new business throws everything into chaos, and changing up. I feel like I went through a lot of changes really, really fast, and so while I don't know where I'm going to land, I feel really good about where I'm at right now, because everything, it's been a very positive chaos, I guess. It's been a very positive season of chaos for us. So I totally understand that feeling of like, yeah, this is the right choice. Like this is good for me. I just gotta,
So let's shift a little bit sort of more towards music, and I want to talk to you about music, or just tell me about music that inspired you to start doing synth. What was some music that you heard that you're like, yeah, I want to do that?
Yeah, the Sufjan Stevens' Age of Odds, or ADZ ads. People read it differently, but I believe it's supposed to be pronounced odds. That album was the album that made me want to buy a synthesizer. Because it was, I was super into Sufjan. I'd been listening to all of his albums, and then he releases this totally different album that's full of these abrasive, very unique synths. I'd never heard synths used in the way he was using them, except for maybe some Flaming Lips stuff, which was another. Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots is probably another album that was really influential on me for synth music. And then those albums really, led to me wanting to learn more about synths. And then as I learned more about synths, now I'm finding out about all these amazing synth artists that I wasn't listening to that now I am. It was really interesting because I didn't listen to a lot of electronic music before I started getting into synthesizers. But then, once you start learning about them, then you're starting to go oh, cool. Now I have a deeper appreciation for what's going on over here. And so, now that I'm, in it, stuff like, God, I can't think of their name right now. Survive. It's the guys who did the Stranger Things soundtrack. I
I
can't.
don't. Yeah,
Their name is like the letters and they're spaced out, and yeah, it's like
yeah, it's
super
something like
synth
that. I know
wavy.
what you're talking about.
But yeah, stuff like that, and like God, my just like blanking on band names right now.
Mm.
Perturbator is another one that I'm like super into. Love that like dark gothic synthwave stuff, and then Aphex Twin and just all sorts of like it kind of like opened my like mind to like all these other sounds. But it was those like crossover like like alternative and indie bands that like started incorporating a lot of synthesizers into what they did that made me go like, ooh, I'm into this. I want to try and do, and it really was Sufjan. That was the big one that got me into it.
Yeah. And I mean, when you started doing YouTube, you started with and have mostly done video game music. So is there like a particular video game soundtrack or video game song that you were like solidified in your mind? Yes, I'm going to do video game music on YouTube with this synth knowledge that I have.
Not exactly. Like I said, when I started my YouTube channel, it actually wasn't a VG channel.
It wasn't.
No, the first like probably like 10 or 20 videos, none of them were video game music. A lot of them I've deleted because I was trying a lot of different things, and some of them I wasn't super happy with because it didn't fit with what I ended up doing. But like some of them are still there. Like I did Front Porch Songs, which was just me and an acoustic guitar doing like Peter Gabriel and Noah Gunderson.
Oh, I think I've seen that, I think, actually.
Yeah, a Beatles song I did a Blackbird, and then I also did my very first big built-up synth rock cover thing, like what I do nowadays, was Lady Gaga. It was Bad Romance. I did a lot of like pop music, and I did like there's a Death Cab cover, there's a Mogwai cover. Around that point was when I tried VGM, and my first video game cover was Stickerbush Symphony, and I did that because Donkey Kong Country's soundtracks were by far like one of my all-time favorite soundtracks, and they're like my all-time favorite games, and David Wise's use of ambience is absolutely brilliant. And so when I decided, oh man, like I was basically sitting in my office like, what should I cover next? And I was like, oh man, I could do a video game song. Man, I could like do a lot of video game songs. There are so many video game songs I want to cover. And so when I did the first one and people reacted positively to it, like people are like, yeah, do more of this. And I'm like, I want to do more of this. And slowly but surely it kind of took over. And I think it was about 6 months in that I basically made the branding decision to have my channel be what I called was like video game and geek culture covers. And I basically really honed in on that. And that was around the time that I stopped doing like just other bands that I appreciated covers as much. Like I still do them occasionally, but like for the most part, that was around the time that I focused my like almost all my attention on like TV shows, movies, video games, and yeah, haven't ever really looked back. I think the big thing was just there's such a big wealth of inspiration, and so like I'd look at my list of like non-video game covers, and I'd have like 2, and then I'd have like 80 video game songs I wanted to cover. And so like because I just had this like deep well of inspiration, I was like, I'm just gonna dive into that for a while, and we'll see what happens. And that just kind of became what I did. Almost everything.
Here we are.
Everything on my YouTube channel is me stumbling haphazardly into something. Like very little of it was like really meticulously planned.
So, sort of talking a little bit more about your relationship with video game music is a bit of a philosophical question I came up with. Do you think how enjoyable a game is to play has correlation with how much you like the music from the game?
I mean, I think it goes both ways. So yes, okay. And I mean there are some games that I feel I probably like even more because the music is that good.
Okay.
Hyper Light Drifter is a big one for me. Like, I don't even think I would have played that game if it wasn't for the fact that, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, this sounds like Disaster Piece, and then his name came up, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to play this game, and I played that game. Like, I like the game, I love the art style, I love the gameplay, but I decided that I wanted to play it because the composer, and I believe that work largely influenced how fondly I care about, like, how much I love that game, but on the other side, like, there are definitely, like, there's no doubt that my memories as a child of playing through Donkey Kong 1, 2, and 3 over and over and over and over again, instilled in me this, like, deep connection to that music. And so it's very much connected to the amount of joy I got playing the game. But then I also think about it, and there are some games that I absolutely love playing that don't have the most amazing soundtracks. So,
Sure.
I think it's yeah, yes and no,
Yes
but
and no.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so let's actually back up. I want to talk to you a little bit sort of about your family because, okay, so you're married, you have 4 dogs, and you have a child, and now you have this new business, this skate park. So what is your family dynamic like? Is there a lot of support? Do you guys kind of stay out of your own business? Are you really supportive? What is that skate park like? Why
Oh,
did you decide to make it? Like, what's
yeah.
going on there? Because it sounds really, really fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. There's absolutely no way I could have done what I was doing if it wasn't for the support of my wife. And there's even less likely of a chance that I feel like we could have pursued, I don't think either of us could have pursued our dreams if we weren't like 100% committed to supporting the
Mm.
other person. You know, having, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the huge emotional crashes, and then the like celebratory moments of like, when albums do well and stuff like that. Uh, I'm so grateful that I have a partner who's there with me and like is, there and saying like, keep going. Like, I don't think, I have friends who are in the creative fields who their relationships took a really sharp turn the moment one of their partners said something along the lines of like, well, maybe if you tried getting a real job, and then that's
Ooh.
like, that's like the worst thing you can possibly hear because, and I've never heard that. My wife is extremely supportive of what I do, and then because of that, like, when she 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago now, was like, I really want to open a skate park. This is, I think this is what I need to do with my life. You know, the like imagery I use is that like I may have been like I jumped out of a plane and you encouraged me to jump out of that. I might not have pulled my parachute yet. Like I'm still free falling. But if I were to like say anything other than jump out with me, we'll figure it out. Like I'd be a huge hypocrite. So come on, let's both be in free fall. Like let's figure this out. Like we'll figure out what our life looks like if we're both figuring out our businesses. Um, but yeah, my wife has been a skateboarder her whole life. Most of her life since she was a young kid and started skating, and yeah, she just had this like really strong desire to make a skate park when we went up to Seattle. And there's a indoor skate park there called Altogether Skate Park, and it's kind of like a hub for community. A lot of cool events happen there, and we don't really have that in Portland. Like the skate parks we do have are a lot of them are outdoors. We have a couple indoor ones, but they're very small. And then there's a huge park, but it's way up Mount Hood, and it's like almost a 2 hour drive to get there. So,
Mm.
like, just kind of realizing the lacking and also the lack of like a community hub, a place where like beginners can really feel comfortable and learn how to skateboard. Like some of the outdoor parks can get really intense when like a lot of people show up and you're trying to find a space to go and you don't even know what you're doing. So
Sure.
basically, creating space where anyone and everyone can come together and ride the ramps on whatever thing they ride the ramps on. It's called a skate park, but we're super supportive of inline skates and scooters and quads, which roller skates for like roller
Yep.
derby. There's a huge roller derby community in Portland, and we've seen a ton of the quad riders come out to the park. They're really into it. It's super awesome. And yeah, that's basically the whole idea behind Stronger is that it was inspired by there's a song by a band called Gunger that says we're better together, like together we are stronger, and that's where the name came from. Is that like when we all come together we're stronger, and yeah, and it's just been years and years of figuring out where we're gonna finding a building that will work that we can afford, and then building out that building, and then building the ramps and the shop and but the crazy thing is, it was like 2.5 years of trying to find a building, and then like a half a year of waiting for the building owners to build out like the bathrooms and have it be move-inable, like to make it ready for us to move into. And then it was like 2 months, and it was like build the ramps, build the park, we're gonna open. Like the last 2 months have been totally nuts.
That's insane.
And but yeah, it's been really great, and I'm really happy that like my son is really excited about it and is really patient when he has to spend long days at the park because we're the only ones working, and Allison
Hmm.
needs me there to help out, and it's been really great for all of us. So yeah, that's it's definitely a
Yeah.
huge part of our lives though right now is
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I gotta say, like, you showed off. I don't know if who, like, if there was a retweet or something, but I saw some footage of that skate park, and I saw that, and this is when I had scheduled my interview with you, and I'm like, I'm going to talk to this guy, and I'm looking at this video, and I just think to myself, it is so incredible. There are all these people here coming together and laughing and having a great time, and there's a family here, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, someone did that. Someone is responsible for making this place, and they invested their time in that. Because I don't know a lot about skating, but it's so clear to me just watching that video that, some people who see that might not in their head be like, somebody made this possible, somebody put this place together and spent their time on this so that these people can get together and share something that they love and are passionate about. So seeing that was just, I just thought that was so fascinating that,
Yep.
You and your wife are responsible for that. That is just so great.
It's largely my wife. Like I'm the emotional support, but it is 100% her business and her passion, and she has poured so much into this park. And I mean, a part of it is also that she just finds people who are like the right people for the space, and she's a really good judge of person. So like, the ramp builder for Stronger is like a world-class ramp builder who like did it right. He put a lot of effort into like getting the ramps just right and making a really cool custom park that fits the space and fits what we're going for. We're hugely grateful for Scott. That's our ramp builder. And he's been super supportive. He's at the park regularly with his kids. He's always coming up with new ideas. You might have seen on my Instagram, and I've been tweeting about it. I kind of joked with him while he was building the ramps. Like the ramps were all open on the sides, and I was like, "Are you gonna like cover up the side of this?" He's like, "Yeah." And there's like this little shelf in one of the ramps, and I'm like, "What if you put like a door right here, and then I could like hide gummy bears in the ramp?" And he's like, "I will do that for you." And like, I kind of joked later on once he put the cover over and it was just flat, and I was like, "Oh, you decided not to build the door?" He's like, "Oh no, I'll build the door. Like just do." And then one day I showed up and there was hinges and a door and a lock on it and a sign that said "Not yet." And I was like, "What is he doing?" And he basically like, then a few days later he sent Allison a video on her phone of like the park was dark and like the whole like the outline of like the door was glowing, and he like put a key in and turned the lock and opened it, and then the video cut. And then he took another video of him removing the "Not Yet" sticker. And then the next day I showed up and there was an envelope with keys. He like made it all theatrical. It was amazing. And so now I have my like secret door in the park where I hide my treasure, and I have like a little like ornate treasure chest that I keep gummy bears in.
That's hilarious. I love that.
But yeah.
So yeah, that's your wife's business. So let's talk a little bit about your business.
Yeah.
On YouTube. So this is probably going to be a bit of a lengthy response. It doesn't have to be, but I want to ask you, what do you think of the current state of YouTube?
I don't know.
Right?
I have no idea. So the first thing to talk about my business and YouTube and the state of YouTube is that I never have and never will rely on YouTube to be my employer. No way in hell. YouTube is a mess. And I have no interest in playing the algorithm game and trying to even like parse what it's going to be, because in 2 months it's going to be different, and a new thing's going to blow up. And if I wanted to make money on YouTube, I'd be following the trends and probably moving on to, I don't even know what's popular nowadays. Reactionary political videos still, or are those dying out? I think now, like it's crazy because things go and they come and go so fast. It's like vlogs. No, vlogs are dead now. Like,
oh yeah, they're gone.
So like it's crazy how things shift so rapidly, and it's really cool that the platform does what it does, right? That's the way I see it. YouTube is not my employer. They do not pay my paycheck. I do not bow to them in any way, shape, or form. They are a really sweet video sharing platform, and that's it. Like, they host all my videos for free. Cool. I'm happy. I get like $80 from them a month in like what very, very small amount of ad revenue I get. Sweet. But for me, it was never in my business plan. Once I started to take it seriously, YouTube was the platform for the content. I wanted to have my, how I made money come from everything else connected. So like, I make money from album sales, from streams on Spotify and Apple Music, from Patreon, from merch. Like I basically, and then also I make a decent amount of money off commissions, doing original work, doing composition work, doing writing music for YouTube channels and for short films, and hopefully one day for a video game.
Yeah.
You know, my idea was if I could find as many different avenues that I could make a decent amount of money on, that way I don't have to like, you know, but definitely never YouTube. Like YouTube was always, I never ever wanted to entrust my like stability to YouTube, a company that will never and has never cared about creators. Like there's just no, and the thing is like, I don't blame them. We're not the customers. The customers are the advertisers. Yeah. Like we are the product that YouTube is selling to advertisers, right? And I think a lot of YouTubers get that mixed up. They think that YouTube is entitled to treat their creators well, and they're not. They're not financially incentivized to do so. They're not, like, their business model is not made to incentivize caring about creators. Like, we're the can of corn on the shelf. They care about getting the people, the advertisers, to come in and look at that can of corn and go, yeah, I'll put my ad on it. Like, that's what. Okay. You don't actually put ads on cans of corn, but the fact is, you're the product. Like, you're not, like, as YouTubers, we're not. YouTube doesn't give a shit about us, and they're never going to. And the sooner you realize that, I think the better chances you'll have of using the platform to make a profitable, like, to basically find a way to make your art sustainable. That's the way I like to word it, because profit and all that can get really messy into the business world. And for me, it's about sustaining this thing that I care a lot about while also taking care of my family. And yeah, for me, it's just don't trust. So no, I have no idea where YouTube's going or if it will ever, you know, I know that it was much harder for me to start my channel than it was for the people who came before me. You know, people like Smooth McGroove and Jules, and like, because they were all making videos for years before I started, and it was much harder for me to do it than for them. And then it's even harder for people who are getting into the game now than it was for me.
Tell me about it.
Like, I do not. I feel that. I feel that super hard, and like, that's why I think, you know, don't focus on like subscribers. The number of subscribers is the least important metric you'll ever focus on. Like, focus on the fan base that you are building and like pour into those people. And like, that's, you know, that's why I have Discord and I have Patreon, and I'm just all about fostering and caring for like the people who are actually here because they care about the stuff I'm making. And hopefully, you know, that can continue to slowly grow. And while that's growing, I can continue to find more like composition work and stuff, because that's something that I really want to get more into.
Yeah. And I mean, as you know, on the topic of trends, whether or not you follow them, it's sort of, you know, as you were saying at the beginning, it's kind of indisputable to say that you did not get a big boost from Undertale. So we're going to take a moment to talk about some Undertale. And, well, I guess I can how am I'll phrase this. I'll say I'm not disappointed, I'm not sad, because, you know, there were certain things that you did on your channel. You had a lot of great videos, and then I noticed that there are people who are like, but where's Deltarune? Like, they came to expect it. You know what I mean? Because, and that's sort of going back to the whole trend thing, is it's like they expect you to hit on that trend because it's Deltarune. You're the other Undertale guy. You're the blue side guy. They want Deltarune. So I have to ask you, you didn't do Deltarune, and is that because you genuinely weren't interested, you wanted to avoid the trend, or was it something completely different?
So yeah, with Deltarune, I actually wrote like a whole blog post about this because I felt I needed to address it in the moment. And like, thankfully, like, again, the people who matter the most, like my fans who have stuck through me, were like, you do what you got to do, man, it's great. But
yeah, I
talked about it. I had really complicated feelings surrounding Deltarune. So when it first announced that Chapter 1 came out, and I was playing through it, I got about an hour in and realized it wasn't just like a 20-minute demo, and like collapsed in like a pool of tears, like, and in a bad way, like freaking out, panicking, even though I was enjoying the game, because I just came to this realization that people are going to want me to do this music like right now. And then the deluge of covers for Deltarune came out like immediately, and I was just overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by the whole thing, right? Like when I did Undertale, I did Undertale because I played the game and went, oh, this is cool, I like this. And I you know, my first cover was before Undertale became this like absurdly weird like thing within the VGM cover community. Like it's absurd. It is. It's completely ridiculous how Undertale became this very 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 unique like entity. Like before Undertale, like there were songs that were covered a lot, but nothing compared to Megalovania. Nothing.
Oh my god. No.
And I understand that, like, as someone who did a bunch of covers before the wave came, and then had an extremely well performing and extremely like Determination sold extremely well. I was able to take care of my family for 2 years off of what we what we made off that album. So that was wild. That was the first time I was like, oh, I'm successful. Like I'm a successful musician. I'm doing this full time. Sweet. And I get that, like, people see that. They see a game that they love. They see a game that mattered a lot to them. And they see people, doing what they want to do, make money and support themselves off music because of this game. And kind of everyone jumped in on that, right? And I don't blame anyone. Like, I don't think anyone just did it for money. I think that's stupid. Like, the game's a great game with amazing music. I don't fault anyone for being interested in doing the music. I think that's amazing. But it did just create this really wild culture of literally everyone in the world has covered Megalovania, has covered some of these songs. And so for me, I just didn't have it in me, like, for whatever reason. It was a combination of everyone else covering it, of feeling this immense pressure like I'm supposed to do it, of and I wrote, like, I'm not writing it out. I'm not saying I'm never going to cover Deltarune. I just don't have it in me right now. And I will say, even then, there were songs that I was like, I want to do a cover of this at some point. Just not right now. I just don't have, like, I sit down to do it and I'm just empty. And if that happens, I scrap the project. That's always been my rule. It's like, if I get an idea and then I sit down to do it and there's nothing, I move on to something else. And so that's kind of where I've been with Deltarune. And I'm going to still do covers from it eventually. Let's just wait. Maybe once chapter 2 comes out, I'll finally put But that was also the thing of, like, there's so much mystery behind it when it first came out. It's like, what is this? Like,
exactly.
Is he going to drop the whole game in 6 months? And then Toby released his whole thing about it, and I was like, okay, cool. I have time. And I don't know. I think I'm starting to get to a point where maybe Deltarune music will be coming up soon, but ish. I'm definitely not as, like, stressed about it at this point, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. There's at least 3 songs that I've wanted to do since the game came out, and so we'll see. But it was just tough. I was in a weird place with it, and I just didn't feel it at the moment. So that's why I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, man, I gotta applaud you for that, not giving into that. That's the fact that you're just like, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm just gonna let this go. That's just inspirational, because there's just, I mean, back to the whole state of YouTube thing. There's so much pressure to, like, get on that, do the thing that everybody is expecting you to do because everybody else is doing it. And, like, the fact that you were able to step away from that and just be like, I can't do this right now. I'm not saying I'm never gonna do it. And just sort of pursuing the artistic things you were interested in currently at that time. That's just impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah.
So kudos to you, man. Do you think when you do hop on that Deltarune train, maybe, for all we know, months, maybe years from now, even if it takes that long, when you're really feeling like it, do you think we will get something similar to Determination, or do you think it's not going to be anything like that? You're just going to explore it in a new kind of way?
Rich and I have talked about it, and he's patiently waiting for. He said, "I'll wait for you, bud." Like okay. So I have no doubt that once I start getting into it, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do it. A part of me has put a lot of thought into, like, getting a bunch of stuff together and then releasing it all at once. Maybe I'll explore it slower. I don't know. I'm really leaving it up in the air, but I definitely know that I'm pretty sure that once I have enough tracks, and once there's enough tracks to put something together, there will probably be something similar-ish to what was Determination that comes out. I know one thing that I really want to do is that Rich and I have some ideas about another split album for a completely different video game property.
Okay.
That we've talked about multiple times. And I think, for me, I want to finish that one first and put out a non-Toby Fox Ace Waters Rich Oddie beat. and then
Very cool.
then maybe we'll work on some Deltarune stuff.
I'm patiently waiting for it to come out, however many months or years it takes. I'm ready to listen.
It'll come out eventually.
I'm looking forward to it. So, I mean, I've been following you for a couple years now, and if you know anything about me, because, I mean, it's not like, I haven't talked to Ace before this interview. What you may know about me is that I'm a really, really big fan of everything that Involved in the Troubles has put out. I asked Josiah about it, and it's pretty clear that it's kind of just like a matter of people being busy, and not that there's no want to do it, but the fact that everybody's just kind of busy with their own stuff, and it's hard to get something like that together. So I'm not going to ask you, like, when is Involved in the Troubles coming back, because I know that it will at some point, but that might not be for a while. So what I will ask you is, what is a song or some songs that you want to do with Involved in the Troubles?
Oh, let me I want to make sure I get the name of the game right. That's not it. Shoot. It's a... Oh, man. I'm not going to be able to remember it right now. Shoot. It's a... Is it Glock or Block or Gluck or... It's a Tim Fallon game.
Okay.
And it was a SNES game. It was like a really weird, like, claymation-y platformer. Someone asked me, has been asking me for a while to do. Actually, that's where I can find out. It's on Patreon. I've got one patron who's been asking me to do music from this game for a very long time, and I really want to do it with them. Like, that's what I'm waiting for. So that's definitely one thing. I'm going to find it so I can get the right name for it. It's right. It should be in here.
All right.
But there's so many songs. There's so many songs I want to do with them. Every once in a while, I'll get an idea for a song. I'm like, nah, this has got to wait. One thing I really, really want to do, and I really hope we can do this at some point, is I want to build a whole, like, progressive fusion song out of the GameCube startup noise. Because it's like, it's such a, just that as a lick. Like, and
just go into it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And basically turn that sound into a track. Be a lot of fun.
I'm ready for that to be 20 minutes long. I'm buckling down for that.
There's a couple Genesis games that Josiah really wants to cover that I'd always be down to do. Pluck. That's it. P-L-O-K is the game. It's Tim Follin, who's like a madman video game composer who wrote a bunch of absolutely absurd music for mostly bad games.
Okay.
Like, if you've ever heard, like, there's a song from NES Pictionary that's, like, straight up sounds like a Yes song. That's Tim Follin.
Okay.
There's this old NES game called Solstice that has a really wild prog soundtrack. Just totally above and beyond anything anyone else is doing. His music is super wild, and he did the soundtrack for Pluck, P-L-O-K, and that's something that I really want to do with the guys. And then, yeah, I don't know. There's so much stuff I'd love to do with them. I think it's just, yeah, like you said, we're all really busy. Josiah's working on his album right now. And honestly, like, a thing that we're waiting for with the album is Austin is working on drums, but he only has so much time to record drums for that album. And so, like, that's getting all of our schedules to line up, especially with my life in complete chaos right now. And like, to be honest, like, Involved in the Troubles, typically our songs would come together because I was the one going, all right, guys, let's do it. And I'd be the one who'd be like, here, I sent you a demo, record something. And then I'd get that part and I'd mix it together. And I go, okay, Josiah, record some bass over this. Like, typically I was like, although, it's 100% all four of our, unique, like, inspirations and talents coming together, I was typically the one, like, pushing us to, like, keep making stuff. And once I kind of said, I need to step back, if any of y'all want to, like, take the reins, go for it. And, then we were all really busy, and just no one has really taken up those reins again. So hopefully at some point we'll make more music. I love making music with all of them. Josiah and I have been working on this album for the last few months, and it's been, like, some of the most fulfilling musical work I've done. It's super great to be able to sit with someone and just spend like an hour trying to figure out the perfect chord for this one section, and then, like, once it clicks and you find it, you're like, we solved the puzzle. The song came together. And to hear his, like, absolutely this album is gonna be so good. Like like he put so much heart and effort and like time into his parts, and like to be able to take those and like really pull it all together as like I don't know. I never realized how much I love doing like production work, and this has been really really illuminating to me that like I love producing and mixing and like working with an artist to help them, to watch their vision come to be. And that's been a big part of this. It's just been great. So point is, I love making music with these guys. I love doing stuff with Rich. I love doing stuff with Austin. We really gotta start working on a project again, and all have the time to do so.
Are there any plans for either an album with the songs that already exist coming out, or is there a plan for a Involved in the Troubles album at all?
Not at this point. I feel like it'll probably be one of those, once we have enough, I'll go back and remix everything and put it all together as an album. Like right now, I think we have like 5 songs, I think?
5 or 6, I think.
5 or 6, yeah. And there's a couple that we could probably go back and like rework. Like there's a song that I believe it was just me, Josiah, and Austin did. Or is Rich on that? Maybe it's just me, Josiah. Maybe it's just me, Rich, and Austin. Austin did a Final Fantasy map medley on his channel that I worked on with him, and we were thinking about taking parts of that and reworking them as Involved in the Troubles pieces. There's an older cover of it's something from Final Fantasy VII that Austin and I did that could very easily become a cover for all of us. So like it's the one where he like death stares the camera the whole time. It's amazing.
Oh, I feel like I've seen that. I think I've seen that.
Yeah, because he's just like staring at the camera because he was looking at the like red light to make sure it didn't stop recording. That was what he was doing. Because DSLRs will stop recording after like 9 minutes, so that's what he was doing. Was he was making sure it didn't stop recording. But yeah, that would be one. So there's I feel like we actually have a pretty decent body of stuff that we could put together. But I'm a big fan of having new stuff on albums. Like whenever I release an album, I tend to not want it to be just stuff that's already come out. So I know for me at least, I'd want to go in and like get a couple songs down and then like release an album with one of those new songs.
Sure. So we're going to really quick finish up this sort of main chunk of the interview with a couple questions that I'm doing. So I'm doing some research projects for school. So I figured I'd ask you some questions that relate to those because they're music based. And I was actually just talking to Jules, Family Jules, the other day about this stuff, and I think it's fascinating. So I'm going to go ahead and bring some of these questions to you, and maybe the public can consider as well. So I'm doing some research on touring musicians, so I have a question. Have you ever been on tour, or will you ever be on tour?
I have never been on tour. And I have... Touring is not in my current projected future, mostly because of my family, and I'm very Portland bound at this point, with the skate park and with, I have a kid and dogs and all that. So I don't think touring is in my near future. I'd love to start playing like at least shows at certain conventions. But even that I haven't been like proactive about. Like I keep being in that place where like, well, if anyone asks me, I'd do it, but I don't actually like, go on the MagFest website and actually apply to be a musician.
Sure.
I'd love to. I think a big part of it though is that touring live, even without like touring, just playing live, takes at least certain things that I don't have equipment wise. My studio is all of my equipment is very studio focused. So I'd have to like invest at least a decent amount of money if I were to start playing live, and I just don't have that right now. So I think that's a part of it. Also, the way I arrange music is very in the moment, so I'd have to kind of restructure everything, like whatever my set would be. There's no way it would be like, in any way super similar to my music videos. It would be very different.
Okay.
I've thought about doing what I was doing on Twitch, The Joy of Analog, where I kind of make is basically a improvised like ambient electronic music. I've thought about doing that live. I think that would be a lot of fun. I actually thought about pitching the idea of doing a like morning like synth ambient meditation concert at like a MagFest or a MagWest.
Ooh.
Where it's like a really early concert where like you show up and I'm just making like really quiet ambient music and like leading guided meditation for people at like 10 in the morning or something at a con.
That sounds awesome.
And like and like 3 people will show up to it because everyone's hungover. But it's just an idea. I feel like that could actually like fit a certain. It could take what I do, but then if I want to travel, I need to get a travel case for my modular. If I want to bring that, I have to get. There's no way I'm going to bring the Voyager, my giant Moog in the corner.
Yeah.
So I need to get a smaller bass synth and stuff. So that's, I think, the big thing right now is just the financial needs of doing a live show would be really expensive.
Possibly in the future, but not something you're looking into right now at this moment.
Maybe eventually, yeah, but probably not in the near future. Anything like any sort of like long-term touring. I don't think it's just not what I'm doing right now.
I gotcha. So I have one final question for you before we move on to our next segment here.
Uh-huh.
And this one's completely out of left field because of the research I'm doing, but it still relates to music. How would you define Asian American music?
Huh. Well, I feel completely not like this is not. I'm not the voice of the Asian American. Like I feel completely like not a professional in this category in any way. Or not an expert in this category in any way. Asian American music, interesting.
So if I can sort of offer, so I am Asian American, and I am currently taking a class studying Asian American music. And one debate that we often come to, because this is a very heavily discussion-based college class, this is something that I'm particularly fascinated with, is the definition of Asian American music. Because the two sort of routes that you can take are, is Asian American music Asian American because it sounds Oriental, it sounds like it is drawing inspiration from Asian cultures, or is it Asian American because the people who are making it are Asian American? So for all, we could have an Asian American prog metal band, an Asian American rap band, no like inspiration from that culture's instrumentation at all, but it is Asian American because they are making that. And I've had a lot of different discussions about that. So what do you think? What are your opinions on that, if you care to offer them?
Yeah, I feel like if I were to start like listing off bands that I would consider to be Asian American music, they'd probably fall in the latter category. They'd be like math rock bands in America that are like inspired by and made up of like, Asian Americans who are inspired by the math rock scene in Japan, which was then inspired by like the math rock scene in like the Midwest, like that kind of stuff. Or like I don't remember if Light is from Japan or if they're from America.
I'm not sure.
They're a really awesome like progressive mathy band.
I feel like I've heard of them. Yeah,
they're one of my favorites. Stuff like that. I feel like that's what I would if someone were to ask me like what is that style, I'd probably find music like that would be more so, like you said, different genres that are made up of Asian Americans. Because I feel like in my mind, a lot of music that's like has those like Oriental tropes feels kind of like weird. Like especially because I
totally get it. Yeah,
and I feel like a lot of that stuff actually isn't made by Asian Americans, and and it kind of has that like I don't know. I don't want to get to like. Don't want to trigger anyone with language, but it gets kind of appropriative at times. Like, kind of like just taking this thing without really having any respect or understanding of like the deeper culture. But on the other side of that, I know some people who are extremely, extremely, extremely talented, like traditional Chinese flute players, and they're taking that and applying it to American jazz in really, really unique ways. So that I think is really cool. So, I think it's complicated, and it's definitely not my expertise at all. So I feel like, I can say what I think, but I don't think my opinion means very much at this point, just because I haven't thought about it a lot.
For throwing your 2 cents into the ring, I appreciate hearing different opinions. So we're going to go ahead and hit you with the lightning round. Lightning round is a bunch of sort of some serious, some goofy questions. I'm going to ask you them very quickly, and the goal is for you to answer them as quickly as possible, but if you need to take several minutes to give a really good answer, that's totally
I'll try.
Fine. All right, are you ready?
Answering things concisely is my weakness, but I'll try.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Who is the nicest video game musician on YouTube?
Oh God. Um. Um. Uh. Julia Henderson.
Okay. What is a weird pizza topping combo that you love?
Some people have a really big problem with pineapple on pizza. I love
Mm,
it, so I guess that
me
counts.
too. Me too.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
All right. Fuck, Mary, kill, Rich IDB, Josiah, or Austin Eruption, or an Austin Eruption.
Okay. Definitely fuck Josiah.
Okay.
Marry Rich because he's a breadwinner. He'll pay for me. Been running off his
Okay.
coattails my whole life, or my whole musical career. So why not? And then kill Austin, I guess. Sorry,
All
Austin.
right. Sorry. Sorry, Austin. What is your favorite beverage?
Um. Uh. Hmm. Probably either ginger ale or I hate to say it, but Rockstar organic energy drinks. Only
Oof.
because
All
I drink
right.
them a lot, and I probably shouldn't. I'm also a big fan of cold brew coffee. So
Mm. All right. What is your current go-to multiplayer game?
I don't have one.
No. Okay.
Multiplayer? No, absolutely not. I don't. I don't think I have a single go-to multiplayer game.
Okay. What is a musical fact that you think most people wouldn't know
Just in general, or about me?
in in general, or about you?
Oh, I don't like a weird theory. God, I feel bad because I don't.
Anything.
Uh,
This is a hard bit. Like you're good, man.
yeah, I guess I'll just stick with my musical history then because I can't. I don't want to. I don't want to
Okay.
assume what people do or don't know about music theory. But
Hmm.
for me, I got to meet and play with Les Paul once. That was really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, I know that actually. I remember you posted about that at
I
one
talked
point.
about it in the Q&A. Damn it, people know
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
Okay. Still,
But
still
yeah,
very cool.
yeah.
All right. So if you had to pick one musician that you owe everything to, who would it be?
My dad.
Your dad? All
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
If you were going to compose music for a video game, what kind of video game would you want it to be?
Something moody and atmospheric, like a game that involves like exploring a cave or being deep in space or something like that.
All right. What's your favorite pie flavor?
Cherry or lemon
Okay.
meringue or lemon meringue.
Both excellent choices. What's the movie you're most excited for right now?
Um, Either Detective Pikachu
Mm-hmm.
or that new Quentin film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, I don't know if I've heard of that yet. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
Name a video game soundtrack that you think is overrated.
Halo.
Yeah? Ooh, I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah,
fight you on that one.
yeah. A lot of people
Uh,
have asked me to cover Halo 2 music, and I just don't. Nope, not
nah.
my thing.
Um, who is your favorite video game character?
Right now, I'm going to say Terra from Final Fantasy VI.
Okay? Using only music knowledge, calculate the mass of the sun.
F. Phrygian.
Excellent. That's the correct answer. He's a genius. What is your favorite color?
Cerulean Blue.
All right. And the final question. Not a question. It's a request. Tell me a story.
One time, I was in a overcrowded, overheated hotel room, and I was sitting next to a fairly drunk individual who had his hand in his heads and wasn't saying
Oh.
much of anything. And his name was Richardson B. And and I was having a completely separate conversation with another person, and that person asked me we were talking about favorite music, and I had just happened to mention that my wife was one of her favorite bands is Rush, and Rich very slowly lifted his head and just went bad. And then from there,
Oh.
we proceeded to ask Rich his unfettered drunk thoughts about a number of musicians, and most of them, the answer was bad.
Okay.
And
Well,
that was
no.
yeah, that was I think the second time I ever hung out with Richard B.
Nice. Well, now we really know Rich sucks because he doesn't like Rush, so
Yeah,
that's mean. All right, let's go ahead and slide into the fan questions now. We have a couple of them.
All right.
We'll try and get through them quickly. So we got Ro Panaganti, who was previously on the show. Hi, Ro, how you doing? And he asks, if you were challenged to make a song from scratch with nothing but $1,000 budget for instruments, what do you buy and why?
Yeah, I saw this question, so I had a chance to think about it. The first thing, most important thing, is who am I writing it for? Because if someone's giving me $1,000 budget to buy instruments, I'm not allowed to use any of my current instruments for whatever reason in this scenario. I'm obviously writing it for someone. So if they want guitar, I'm obviously going to go and buy a cheap guitar. If they want real drums, if they're like dead set on having real drums, I'm going to go to like a used music shop and buy like a cheap bass drum and snare, and then probably like come up with like, making noises on other things. But I think that the first thing I would want to do is get any organic, or like, I don't know if organic is the right word, but any like physical instruments that they want, and make sure that I can facilitate those needs, because although synths are my expertise and I love physical synths, you can recreate synths pretty easily in plugins for super cheap, and I'd rather have real instruments and synth plugins than like have to like use like sample based like guitar packs or stuff. I'm not into that. So that's my answer, is whatever they want in the song would be what I'd throw down for. And then
An excellent answer.
Yeah.
So we have not a question, but an image that you replied to. It says, Ryudo's, I hope I'm saying that right, Ryudo's Question Corner Act 3, the overly edited Q&A video. So can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so when I made my Q&A video, which was a Patreon reward for back when I was still on per video Patreon, but I said I'd do a Q&A video, and I decided as I started working on it that I wanted to make it this big, ridiculous, overly edited Q&A, because rather than just like sitting there and talking, I did like all these different sections, and I had tons of graphics, and I got really deep into basically turning it into something that was way more than it needed to be. It ended up taking me like a month to make. And the reason why that screen existed is because Ryudo, one of my patrons, really took to heart the ask as many questions as you want part of it. I said I would answer every Patreon question, and Ryudo asked me like a whole slew of questions, and I just decided, kind of as a joke, to put all of his questions in one section. And then that screen was, I did the like sonic transition for it, and that's the shot of that screen. And my response to him posting that picture was because I was going to say he's not allowed to ask any questions for this Q&A, because he already asked all the questions he's ever allowed to ask. But that's all in jest.
Sorry, Ryudo.
That's only in jest. Ryudo's a great dude.
All right. I hope I'm saying this right. Gouvain 2088, I think is how you would say that. That's their handle. And they ask, do you prefer standing fans or box fans for your fan questions?
Yeah.
And then, serious question, what keeps you motivated / what's your favorite thing about making music?
Standing fans, for sure. I actually have one that's right over there that I turn on when it gets hot up here. No, definitely all about having that up, having the fan blowing up higher, Standing fan or box fan has to sit on the floor. That's no good. So yeah, that's my answer to that. And then, like keeping motivated, one of the biggest things I find is actually trying as much as possible to remove the pressure of all the pressures that fortunately or unfortunately are a part of my life and music nowadays. Sometimes that actually means finding joy in doing something that has nothing to do with music, because it's like it gets me out of that funk of like I'm not accomplishing anything. Oh my god, I'm so behind. I haven't done enough music. I need to do more music, and then I get caught in that funk. And sometimes like just walking away and like doing dishes, that's the thing that helps me to get back to get back into music. Also, making music that has no immediate purpose, that I don't know why I'm making it, is another thing that is a regular practice. When I start feeling really down or I'm really struggling to find inspiration for something, I find that I'll make music that doesn't have a project attached to it at all. I just start playing. Sure. And then I build a song that has no perceived audience, no like intended purpose, no like conceptual place that it needs to be. And like, you know, that's where my last original album Duality came out of, was late night, I'm struggling to make a cover, I'm just going to make something. And then eventually those songs kind of came together to be that album. So that's my, you know, that's the thing that I find is great for keeping that joy of music alive. It's just sometimes you got to make something that has no reason to exist other than to be made.
That's awesome. We have Jads of all trades with a fantastic question. How often do you hate music?
Never. Never, ever. I don't hate music at all. Even if it's music I don't like. Like, I think if I had to answer, though, if you know, I don't want to be this, like, bubbly... One time I was on a panel with Rich and Jules and a couple other people, and afterwards, I think it was either Rich or Jules who walked up to me, and they're like, you're up there, and you're like... All of us are like, ugh, we have cold, dead hearts about all this, and you're like, go follow your dreams, kids. It's like somehow my heart hasn't died through this whole process. But honestly, if I had to answer, I would say the things that bum me out the most musically are when people are obviously not, when they're doing it, but they're not in it, right? Like, which is a really, really hard thing to make a judgment on. I understand, and like. That's why I try to not, but when you see like a performer who's lost that spark, that's lost that joy, but they're still going along with it, that just bums me out so much. Like I just want to like be like, find joy in this again. Like, why are you doing this if you're so unhappy? You know, so that's always really tough.
For sure. We have the Nothing Maker. Yeah, that's right. The Nothing Maker, or Lily, asks. Oh, okay. This is kind of a jumble. I'll read it. I'll try my best to say. Okay. Take your really early years of doing music. How do you feel about the you from back then? Like, how do you feel about your first works now that you've obviously grown and gotten better? Also, is there an early piece you're still fond/proud of?
Yeah. So, I still know almost all the lyrics to the very first song I wrote in proper, which was like my freshman year of high school. I wrote a song called Need to Find, and the lyrics have absolutely no meaning to them. They are just words that would sound cool in a song. As like legitimately, like there is no meaning behind the song whatsoever. And I find that my earliest work kind of falls into that pattern. I was really into wanting to be in a band and write music, but I didn't really think super hard about what writing a song meant outside of like lyrics need to rhyme. And yeah, I went through some interesting periods of time in music. I think my music is so tied to who I am in my life. Like, it's so personal that you really kind of have a really unique like picture of kind of my life through music. And so while there's some stuff that I'm not the most proud of, some stuff that I prefer to keep buried. A lot of it I'm fairly open about, like, you know, like all my old Motive Makes a Man stuff, which is, it's not that old, right? Like, it's 2008, 2009. That's not,
sure.
That's like 10 years old, but like, that's not like my high school and college days. That stuff doesn't have a ton of, I kind of keep that. Every once in a while, I'll drop a little bit of it just to be like, this is where I started. Do it. Just start making stuff. Cause look, I started here. We can all figure it out. But like, and like all of my Motive Makes a Man stuff, I'm still extremely proud of, even though a lot of it's very rough, like mix wise and like production wise. It's me just kind of doing it and figuring it out. So, but I'm still really proud of like the concepts I wrote in that. And I'm trying to go even further back to try and think of. There's a song I wrote called. So it was like a parody of emo, of like dashboard confessional emo music. Okay. And it's called Another Broken Promise. And at the end of it, it's like all acoustic guitars because it's like dashboard style. And at the end, there's this like 4 or 5 part like round. It's not quite a round, but like all these different vocal parts come in one after another, and they kind of stack on top of each other. And so it's like, you know, like one person comes in, it's like another broken promise, and then another voice comes in and a harmony to that, and then another line comes in, and then eventually it leads up to like everyone singing sitting in silence as I wait to die, because, you know, it's a parody of emo music. So the whole idea is like it's a sad breakup song about wanting to die.
Mm.
And I'm really proud of that extended bridge that I did there. Even though like when I recorded it, it's a huge jumbled mess. Like
Okay.
listening back on it, but yeah.
Awesome. Charles Ritz asks, "What's your favorite cheese?" Kind of a change of pace there.
Favorite cheese.
It's a hard question. Cheese is good, man.
Depends on what it's going with, you know, like because cheese isn't. It's so hard to like judge a cheese. If we're talking cheese on its own, probably like really light bries, like ones that aren't super like stank. You know, like
Yeah.
there's a really good. It's basically like fancy cream cheese, but it's like technically in the brie family. That's my favorite. That I'll get normally just to eat on its own. But like outside of that, like, you know, if I'm making a sandwich, cheddar or pepper jack, if, you know, you're making a pizza, obviously mozzarella, like, you know, it depends on what you're putting the cheese on.
Yep, there you go. Connoisseur of the cheeses we have here. I hope I'm saying this right again. I think it's Zini Draws, I think is either Zenny or Zini Draws asks or says, "Because you make a lot of covers in your style alongside your original works, what are the two types of projects like? Do you enjoy making covers any more or less than original pieces?" That's actually a really good question.
That is a good question. They both are really fulfilling in different ways. And I think because of how I choose to do cover music, it's closer, there's less of a division, honestly. Because, like, when I listen to a cover song, I think it's one thing is that, you know, it's nice to have source material that you can then be influenced by and choose to adapt. But I do so much adaptation and, you know, arrangement and changes. Like sometimes my cover of a song is very far removed from the original. And so there's a lot of myself that gets added to that. So it is closer to what I do with original music. But also it's really nice to just sit down, and I think the best part about making original music is that I don't make videos for it. So I don't have to worry about lights. I don't have to worry about setting up the camera because I've said this before. All of my stuff, I record every single take I do until the song is done.
So much work.
So what you're seeing in the video is me actually playing the actual take that ended up in the song. I don't go back and then film like a lot of EGM people do. And it's something I've always wanted to do, and it's something I like doing. I think the other way would be way more work, just because of how much improv goes into the work I do and how a lot of stuff kind of comes out as I make it. And I think it would throw off my whole workflow. But that being said, when I'm making original music, I don't have to worry about all that stuff. So I can just be like, oh, I'm playing the piano, and I don't have to worry about the camera. That's right here. So yeah, that's nice.
We have Chris London Film.
Oh, get out of here, Chris. What do you want?
There's a history there. There's a history there.
He's a friend. He's a good friend.
Okay. Chris London asks, "What sort of score do you think would be most challenging to make?"
I think if a filmmaker asked me to write a score for his film, and then I told him what I'm strongest at, which is, you know, ambient, electronic synth music, and then he said, "Cool, can you make me a score with a like jazz quartet?" and that's what I want. I think that would be really tough, because that's what Chris made me do on his short film, Uncle Gareth. So that honestly though, that was like really challenging, because like it was very much out of my wheelhouse. It was out of like what I normally do. It was also extremely fulfilling. There are a couple tracks on Chris is a director. He made a short film called Uncle Gareth that I scored. It's a very, very good film. It's actually showing up at a couple of film festivals right now, which is awesome.
Exciting.
And you can watch it. I believe the whole film is online now, so you can go check it out if you want to watch it. It's not super long, and it's very good. But there's a couple parts in that where like there are some I'm proud of the whole thing, but there's some things in there that I'm like, yes, I'm happy that you kind of forced me out of my comfort zone, because there's some really cool stuff in there. But yeah, I think the hardest part is, although that was hard just conceptually, because it was not my like traditional way of composing, the project wasn't hard, because the person I was writing music for, we were like in sync, and we were talking, and we were connecting, and he was supportive of what I was doing, and I wanted to support his artwork with my music. And because we had a healthy relationship, the hardest composition jobs are when there isn't that relationship. One of the two hardest composition jobs I've ever had to do, one of which was I was writing a song for someone, And it was actually like early on in my career, so I was doing it for free. And the guy just kept coming back with me like, why don't you change this? And then I do it, and he'd be like, I don't like this thing, and then I did it again. I did like 6 or 7 versions of the song for him, and then he ended up choosing like the first one I did. He's like, actually, I think this one's good. We're good. And it was like so defeating. And then the other hardest one was a person who went into the job with this, I'm your boss, I tell you what to do, you're providing me with a product, so give me what I want attitude, rather than a like we're working on this together. And like because of that, he was very controlling of things that I had to like really stand up for. Like, no, I believe the way I did this is actually better than what you think, because you're hiring me because I'm a musician and you're not. Like, I had to kind of lay down that law with that guy. Whereas when you see something as like a partnership, like most of the directors and people I choose to work with nowadays, we can have that conversation. I can be like, okay, well, what did you think of this? And they'll say like, I think this works. What do you think of this? Why did you do this? Like, I'm always excited when if a creator has questions about what I do, they ask the question like, why did you do this? Because everything I do is typically very, very intentional, and then we can talk about it, and hopefully, you know, I don't want to come off like I'm super inflexible and like my art is gold. It's just really frustrating when someone's being like really overly controlling and not listening and not hearing what I'm trying to present them with. Because if they're not hearing what I'm trying to do, it's really hard for me to get their feedback. Like, because there's just this inherent disconnect. Like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but you're not listening to what I gave you. Like, it's just kind of weird. So those are definitely the hardest jobs, are when there's a breakdown in like the creative relationship.
So can you tell me, I should probably say the name of the person asking the question, Replays FH is asking you, what's your favorite key?
D. D is my favorite key, D major. And I only say that because it's the key that my hands go to whenever I sit down at a piano, and I don't know why. I literally
there's a connection there.
Like, honestly, if I were to say like tonally, I really like both Dorian and Lydian as like the sounds. I really like playing around in Lydian a lot. Absolutely love doing stuff in Dorian, but like if I just being completely honest, every single damn time I sit down at a piano, I'm going for that C sharp and that F sharp, and I don't know why. Like, God, that's my key. So
there it is.
B minor, D major. That's just where my hands want to go.
Kane White asks, what's your current favorite piece of gear?
That is such a hard question.
It seems like a hard question because you've got a lot of gear.
I have a lot of gear, but at the same time, I'm always trying to like rotate out and only keep things that do unique jobs, right? Like the one thing I never want to do is have like 4 synths that all make the same sounds. So like I will regularly, like I recently sold a drum machine. It wasn't because it didn't make the same sound, it's just I wasn't using it because my Tempest, my drum machine is probably one of my all-time favorite instruments that I've ever bought or owned. It's just something about this unique sounds it makes that I'm, consistently drawn to. And like I'll buy a new drum machine and it just sits in the corner because I just keep wanting to use my Tempest. But right now, I think the 2 synths that I'm having the most fun with on a regular basis, that would probably be my go-to favorite synths right now, are my Moog Siren or Siren. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Siren. It's a Minotaur, but it has a Minotaur was a bass synth, so it can only go up to a certain octave. The Moog Siren is the Minotaur architecture, but it can also go all the way up to like +5 octaves. So it's a full octave. It's a mono synth and it's a Moog, but man, just like that and my ARP Odyssey are probably, my ARP Odyssey is like, it's a big white synth that has all these colored like sliders. If you've ever seen it in my videos, it shows up a lot. Yeah. And it just, those two just have such unique sounds that they produce on their own that nothing else in my studio produces, and I'm just constantly wanting to go back to those sounds. So I think there's a couple answers. Also, this boy's really fun. I've been playing with this one a lot.
Oh yeah, I've seen that in like your more recent ones.
Yeah, this is an OPZ. It's a new teenage electronics instrument. They also made the OP1, which is a very popular.
Look, I can see my reflection.
So yeah, they're really cool. I love what they do. They're kind of hipster synths, but I'm into them because I'm a hipster. Yeah,
rocking that hipster life. And then we have the final question of the interview. We have DNA Bro, who asks you, which video game composers inspire you the most?
So I mean, Disaster Piece has got to be way up there on that list. Uh, Rich Freeland, his stuff is super cool. I love that he's doing more films recently. He did It Follows, and now he just released the soundtrack for, I believe it's called Under the Silver Lake, which is a movie I really want to see, but it's just not out yet. But man, the way he like it was really hard when I first heard his music because it was like everything I want to do. I'm like, well, someone else is already doing it. Like now what am I supposed to do? But honestly, that's been a huge inspiration on my music to know that like that style of music can become can be so involved with video game soundtracks is amazing. David Wise, Donkey Kong Country soundtracks were hugely inspirational to me. Tim Follin, people I've mentioned already in this interview. Although Tim Follin's a weird one because whenever he's like, I hate video game music. like I feel like he's more like Josiah in his personality, and I'm like, I love everything, and he's like, argh. He's like a very very crabby man, but he made really really cool stuff. And there's definitely more. I'm just like super like not able to like. I don't know if it's Lena or Lena Rain. She did Celeste.
To this day, I still don't know how you pronounce her first name.
Yeah, me neither.
It's infuriating.
But holy shit is the soundtrack to Celeste. Like, mind-blowingly good. Her music
She just came out with a new album, right? Didn't just recently.
Yeah, she did. I don't want to, like, disparage it. I'm not super into Vocaloid, and it uses a lot of Vocaloid work. So for me, it's just, I think there's a disconnect there, but the stuff that's going on underneath, it's really cool because she's an amazing composer and she writes awesome music. So that's definitely another one. I'm like thinking through the soundtracks that I bought on vinyl. Oh, one more I want to throw out there is No Man's Sky. The soundtrack was done by God, I can't remember their name. They're actually a post-rock band that did the soundtrack, and I adore that soundtrack. It's very, very good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to go ahead and bring our interview to a close. So it's now time for my favorite part of the show, the tradition, where I ask the interviewee to give me some sort of something to work with to write a song. I'm going to write you a real short song, and it can be about anything, can use any technique, can be absolutely anything you want. You just got to give me some instructions, and I'll try my best to make it work. And it seemed like you had sort of thought about this a little bit.
So wait, what?
Beforehand.
Wait, what am I doing?
Okay, so remember the whole, like, Rich's Face is a song? Because I remember we were talking about that, like, I think before I turned on the camera. But the whole thing, right, the tradition on the show is, what I will do is I will ask you, I'm going to write a song for the interview. I'm going to write you a song, and it can be about anything you want. So you just got to give me instructions, like, is it a partial cover? Is it going to be an original? What instruments am I going to use? What technique am I going to use? What is it going to be about? Is it going to have lyrics? Is it not going to have lyrics? Like, you try and describe to me what you want, and I'll do my best to make it. It can be serious. It can be a meme. Normally, it's a meme. People tend to like those. It can be absolutely anything. Just go easy on me.
Okay. I want you to try to capture the feeling of trying to I don't know if I'd use the word despair, but the feeling that comes with the grind of trying to do YouTube. Whatever that feeling is for you, the worst parts of it, maybe it's desperation, maybe it's depression, maybe it's angst, whatever that feeling, those worst feelings that come from life on YouTube, and I want you to express those in an instrumental track. So express the feeling of YouTube, what YouTube means to you in music, but only no vocals, only instrumental.
All right. Well, that's definitely like the most serious one I've gotten. I'm actually really looking forward to exploring that. So you'll hear that now.
Oh,
so there it
wow!
was. Wow, wasn't that fascinating?
That was so wild. You really got it.
Thanks, man. So great. Wow. All right. So the final thing we do before I let you go is it is again tradition to have the previous interviewee ask the next interviewee a question. So it's still in its like beginning phases, but it's looking like the next person who's going to be on the show is the legendary singer Adriana Figueroa. And I'm incredibly excited for that. It's still up in the air. It may not happen, but I'm just going to assume it is. So what is your question to Adriana? Because I know that you do know her. So
I do. Okay, I'm trying to figure out the best way. All right. So I'm going to ask that this question is for Adriana. So if that ends up
that's
being,
totally fine.
This has to be for her. And the question is, it's from, this is how you word it is, from Josie, why haven't you come to visit?
That's a dog thing, isn't it?
That is a dog thing. That is my dog. Josie is my little cute white dog who wants to know why Adriana hasn't visited.
All right.
It's so long.
That is still up in the air, so I really do hope Adriana is on the show next. But
I hope so too.
I really hope so too. If not, would you like to ask another general question to whoever may be on the show next?
Sure.
I may just ask that to Adriana as well anyway.
So the other, I guess if I had a more general question, is if you had no constraints, budget wasn't an issue, time wasn't an issue, like someone walked up to you and said, make whatever music means the most to you, what would you make?
Wow, that's beautiful. It's a really good thing to end on. All right, Ace, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you and where they can support you right now?
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at just search my name, Ace Waters. I don't remember what my YouTube URL is because I think it still might be my old one, which is Ace Waters the Third, and that's a pain. So just look up Ace Waters. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Ace Waters Music. Same with Twitch. I'm trying to get back into Twitch streaming. I got a Bandcamp, which is you can just go to like acewaters.bandcamp.com. It's where I got some of my music. The rest of my music, all my covers are all on streaming services. So if you're looking for like my Sonic album or my Donkey Kong album, any of that stuff, it's not on Bandcamp because it's a huge pain to do covers on Bandcamp. So I do all that through DistroKid, so it's all online. And if you're interested in my wife's skate park, strongerskatepark.com is our website. Also, we're on Instagram, and we keep the Instagram super updated. That's where we do a lot of our social media connection. So go on there and check out what's going on at the park. And yeah, I think that's about it.
All right. And make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of these interviews. I've got a playlist on my channel of all of the interviews I've done so far, and I also do covers of my own. If you really, really like what you see, make sure you check out my Patreon, and hopefully I will see you guys next time with an interview with Adriana Figueroa sometime next month. So again, Ace, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.